Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. The furnished apartment Aaron Turner rented in Champaign for the 1976-77 school year was barely an apartment. The main room was no bigger than the single dorm room he'd had before. The bathroom was a tiny triangle carved out from what used to be a larger space. The other half belonged to a neighboring unit. The kitchen was so small the refrigerator didn't fit inside. It had to sit in the bedroom. That was all there was. The furniture looked like leftovers from previous tenants who hadn't bothered to take it with them. A kitchen table also in the bedroom, two mismatched chairs, a twin bed, a dresser, a nightstand, and a floor lamp. Without off-street parking, this place was near the bottom of the market for off-campus housing at the University of Illinois. Still, that was reflected in the rent. Both the refrigerator and stove worked, and the kitchen had more cabinets than Aaron thought he'd ever need. Aaron's eating habits made the refrigerator essential. He usually had cereal for breakfast with milk and sugar. The milk needed to stay cold, and the fridge kept ants away from the sugar. For lunch or dinner, he opened canned foods like baked beans, beef stew, or pasta from Chef BRD. He rarely finished a whole can at once, storing leftovers in the fridge for the next meal. For salad, he ate lettuce with ketchup or plain cabbage, keeping both chilled. He'd been told vegetables were important for health, so he stocked frozen peas, heating a portion on alternate days to eat straight from the pan. When Marissa first visited, Aaron skipped the peas. She probably got enough vegetables in her sorority, and he needed the saucepan. He put some water on to boil, then placed a can of spaghetti in the hot water to warm. When ready, he served the meal on plates with lettuce alongside. He took out the salad dressings he'd bought, and, guessing Marissa might find ketchup too informal, chose French dressing for himself. After hanging up his clothes and making the bed to prepare for her visit, they sat down to eat. Though Marissa didn't comment on the meal, Aaron sensed she didn't think much of his dinner. Later, in bed, despite the creaky and not-so-sturdy bed frame, she was enthusiastic, so the simple meal hadn't put her off. Still, Aaron didn't want the bed to collapse under them. Having spent 3 summers working at a hardware store, he'd picked up some carpentry skills. Unsure how others managed furniture repairs, he bought some tools and corner brackets and tightened the bed frame. Fixing the floor lamp was next, but that project would wait until Marissa was busy with rush week and away. Even with the extra responsibilities of managing his own place, a modest one, at that, Aaron found the start of his junior year manageable. Over the summer, he'd worked through half of his partial differential equations textbook. Though he still read chapters before lectures, the concepts were familiar, not confusing. He wasn't taking physical education, which saved a few hours weekly and gave him more control over his time. His last distribution requirement was anthropology, which involved a lot of reading, a task Aaron didn't mind at all. In the EE courses, he had to work as hard as ever. He'd received AS in the prerequisites, but so had the students with whom he was really competing. By this time, they'd sorted themselves out, and the competition, while unspoken, was fierce. The students who were happy with BS, and the others who just wanted to pass, occupied chairs. They didn't, however, count. He was a guest at Marissa's sorority for Sunday dinner. He'd tutored 3 of the sisters in college algebra, and they were happy about the results. The dinner was to thank him. They even applauded when he came into the room with Marissa and the chapter president. The current academic chair made a speech exaggerating what he had done. He had his own speech prepared, but Barbara, Marissa's past roommate and one of the ones he'd tutored, got up to speak first. You've heard that Nancy went up a grade, and figure that Aaron probably helped her. You've heard that Haley went from a D to a B. Aaron is certain to have been a big help. I had a C both quarters. You might figure that he wasn't much help to me. Well, that's not how it went. I'd taken the course before. The first semester, I got a D. Worse, through that semester, my grades kept falling. My professor warned me to take the course over instead of going on. But I'd been a pledge, and I'd work harder. By the time I got to the final the second semester, she continued, I don't think 100 on the final would have passed me for the course, and I didn't come anywhere near to finding out. I left a third of the questions blank. Well, when I transferred, the D didn't. I retook the course, and I did better. I wasn't pledging, after all. Even so, I was in over my head towards the end of the course. I was totally lost in the second quarter when Aaron came along. So, my C is as much to Aaron's credit as the others' BS, luckily, that fit into the opening of his planned response. Well, I'm complimented, he said. But, really, I didn't take the tests. These 3 did. And I didn't learn the stuff that year. These 3 did. You'll hear that you have to work to learn math, and that's 100% true. On the other hand, when people say to me that they'll work harder, I ask myself whether they shouldn't be working smarter instead. I hope I helped Barbara, Nancy, and Haley to work smarter. You have to read the book before the lecture. You have to listen to the lecture. You have to read the book after the lecture. If there's a discussion section, you have to go to that section with concrete questions. You have to solve the homework problems for yourself. That's the work you have to do to learn any math course. And math is a series of stair steps, he continued. If you did really poorly on section 11, it doesn't do any good to say you'll study section 12 better, because you usually can't learn section 12 until you've learned section 11. Sometimes, section 12 doesn't depend on section 11, but section 15 will. Anyway, you're going to have to learn section 11 or fail the course. It only makes sense to learn it when the professor is teaching it. It is really easier then. You'll get tested on it then, and the rest of the course will be less confusing if you do. Now, I'm really grateful for this good food, great company, and kind words, and now for the stinger. But I've sent word to Laura, and I'm stating publicly now. If there is a group who want tutoring in college algebra this quarter, I'll make some time free. I can't guarantee being free next quarter. You see, I took my book on partial differential equations home with me over the summer, and I got sort of on top of the first half of the book. I don't know it well enough, but I have a head start on most of the rest of my class. I'll have some time to spare. On the other hand, I can't guarantee to have any time free next quarter, and I will guarantee that I won't be willing to tutor anyone spring quarter that I haven't tutored fall quarter. Basically, falling behind makes both the student's job harder and the teacher's job harder, and I won't have time to help someone who makes my job harder. Now, Marissa assures me that you have something more important than studying to do fall quarter, but that's your choice. The president replied to the warning in a quite friendly manner. As he and Marissa were going out, his 3 ex-students blocked anyone from following them. They stopped on the porch. You have a fan club, Marissa said. Who expect us to smooch, he said. Be ashamed to disappoint them. And so, they had a great kiss. His hands swept down from her shoulders to her rump. He needed that while he pressed her length against him. Then, though, she had to go back inside while he went home. With Marissa shut up in the sorority house doing rush, he bent his attention to the lamp as well as to homework. Back in Evanston, Mr. Schmidt, the manager of the hardware store in which he worked summers, had known that he was going into electrical engineering. He had him substitute for Jeff or Will, the electrical guys, when one of them was on vacation. The other one would fill him in on what they knew. There is absolutely no relationship between house wiring and electrical engineering. Going into ophthalmology? Let me tell you what I know about using mascara on eyelashes. That's I care after all. On the other hand, Aaron associated the resistance to useless knowledge with high school football players, whom he associated with the worst bullying he'd ever received. He wouldn't resist any knowledge. And, now, he was using the 2 lectures he'd received on rewiring a lamp. The plug was on the side of the bed he habitually faced when reading in bed, and the cord was too short to put the lamp on the other side. So, the light tended to shine into his eyes rather than on the page. The light was turned off and on by an old pull chain, which was none too reliable and would tilt the lamp over if pulled too enthusiastically. He removed the cord and installed a much longer one with a plug he considered more reliable. He taped the cord to the top of the headboard when he put the lamp on the side where he wanted it. Then he installed a small rotary switch in the cord where it was next to the middle of the headboard. Now, the pull chain was always on. Rather than stretch and risk pulling the lamp over on himself when he was done reading in bed, he merely needed to reach up to the headboard and push the rotary switch with his thumb. He'd never considered himself a craftsman, but, with the changes to the bed and the lamp, his room was much more comfortable. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Aaron had a course in electrical motor design. Friday, right after the discussion, they had lab. Aaron's lab partner was Tom, another guy who wouldn't be happy with AB in the course. Neither of them was particularly dexterous in wrapping motors, but they persevered. This Friday, he went immediately from the lab to pick up Marissa. She was going to cook dinner for him in his room. What else she'd do in the room was nothing they could discuss while she was on the phone where anyone from her sorority could overhear. But he was looking forward to that much more than to the meal. After they left the sorority house with a shopping bag, they stopped at a grocery store to fill another. She could say what she wanted about the wastefulness of living out of cans, but the bill he paid was much more than the cost of the meal he'd cooked. When he opened the car door for her at the apartment house, he presented her with her own set of keys. That one's to my room. The other is for the front door, but it won't be locked this time of day. Why thank you, Aaron. I don't expect to be here when you aren't. Well, no, he thought. But she was always welcome, and he wanted her to know that. After a quick affectionate moment, Marissa put the food away and then arranged her belongings in the space she used. She wasn't moving in, she had made that clear, but having some of her things around gave Aaron comfort. When he looked in the closet or saw her dresser drawer, it reminded him of her and helped ease the quiet moments when he missed her. When she finished settling in, she came over to him for another brief embrace. They prepared for bed together, putting away their clothes and pulling back the covers. Outside, the daylight was fading. The room wasn't brightly lit, and the bed was tucked into a corner away from the windows. Even so, in the soft light, Aaron thought she looked beautiful. He appreciated the quiet closeness of simply lying beside her. After a while, she sat up and said with a smile, "I'm going to feed my man." Then she headed to the kitchen to cook spaghetti. Aaron had spent hours watching Mrs. Bryant prepare meals, but she was a professional cook. Marissa, in contrast, followed many of the same steps, but in her own relaxed way, boiling water for the pasta, browning hamburger, chopping an onion and green pepper, adding them to the sauce, cooking frozen broccoli, and preparing a simple salad by tearing lettuce into small pieces. Wearing one of Aaron's shirts like a robe and an apron over it, she moved around the small kitchen with cheerful focus. The kitchen was tiny even for her, but she made it work. Aaron sometimes wondered whether all the steps were necessary. They could have just eaten the lettuce as it was, after all. But the results were delicious, and Marissa clearly enjoyed making meals her way. "Leave the dishes," he offered as she began to clear the table. "I've got plenty of time to do them. Do you have dish soap?" she asked. "Sure," he replied. "I picked some up after your first visit." She had stayed in her apron for dinner, perhaps still in housework mode. He gently took the dish soap from her and, since she didn't object, also took the shirt she'd been cleaning earlier. Then, with a playful smile, he scooped her up for a light kiss on the forehead. The tall ceilings of the apartment made it easy and set her gently on the bed. They were both in casual clothes now, unwinding from the day. He made a little ceremony of helping her take off her apron, kissed her cheek, turned on the bedside lamp, and switched off the overhead light before climbing into bed beside her. It was simple, quiet, and just right. "Oh, love," he said warmly. She was his love, and her presence filled him with joy. Her smile lit up as he brushed his fingers along her arm. "You're wonderful," he murmured as she relaxed against him, her face softening with contentment. After watching her peaceful expression, he kissed her cheek again. She held his head gently with one hand, and when she reached for his arm with the other, he shifted slightly. He had an idea. "Want to take the lead?" he asked, lying back with a grin. She tilted her head, considering, her thoughtful expression showing she wasn't just going along with his suggestion. Her face shifted through emotions, finally settling into a playful smile. "Yeah," she said. "Come on, then." She was already moving, climbing over him with a laugh. It was their first time trying this, and it took a moment to get comfortable, but soon she was settled above him, her face glowing in the lamplight, her warmth and presence captivating. She leaned down, gripping his shoulders. The light cast soft shadows across her, highlighting her gentle curves. He rested one hand on her shoulder and the other on her side as she shifted slightly, finding a rhythm. Her expression started curious, adjusting to the new dynamic, then softened into contentment as they moved together. Soon, her face showed a flicker of intensity, her grip tightening briefly. Her breath caught, and she sank closer to him, her body trembling slightly. Seeing her so close, so open, warmed his heart. "Marissa," he said, pulling her gently to him as they collapsed together, her warmth enveloping him. She shook for a moment, then stilled, their breaths sinking. "Should I move?" she asked softly. He hugged her tighter. "Never." She relaxed into his words for a moment before sitting up. "I love you," he said, meaning every word, wishing she'd stay in his arms forever. "Love you too, but I should freshen up." She headed to the bathroom. When he heard the shower, he followed. He needed to clean up too and get dressed to drive her back. He slipped into the shower beside her, but she was nearly done, so he just rinsed off quickly. He did get to dry her off, gently patting her skin with a towel. Then he drove her back to her sorority. He used to worry about other guys as rivals. Now it felt like the sorority itself was his competition, always pulling her away. Over the next few weeks, Marissa seemed busier than ever. They had a few dates at his apartment, but time felt short. They only had deeper moments of connection once per date, and he worried he was rushing things, too eager for her company. Still, he made sure she felt cared for, and she never complained, though he sensed he wasn't at his best. He loved the slower, lingering moments of closeness most of all. Marissa usually joined him for church, but sometimes he skipped services or went alone when she wasn't free. When she couldn't meet in the evenings, he buried himself in studies, reviewing lectures and tackling engineering problems. In the dorm, he'd have joined his roommates for TV, but he hadn't bought one for his apartment. Instead, he read ahead in his anthropology book, finding the descriptions of other cultures as engaging as science fiction. He invited Marissa to the university's first dance of the season, and she agreed, extending their plans to spend the night together. It felt like a glimpse of a future life together. At her sorority, She was helping with the pledges as their dates arrived. He stood by in case she needed support, but she handled it smoothly. At the dance, they kept to themselves, enjoying the closeness. Beverly said hello and introduced her date, but no one lingered for small talk. During slow dances, Marissa pressed close, playfully acknowledging his excitement with a smile. A younger girl, likely a pledge, approached Marissa during a break, wanting a private word. 3 Cokes. He offered. Marissa nodded. He grabbed the drinks and waited out of earshot until she signaled for him to return, setting the Cokes down. Judy needs a ride back to the house, Marissa said. Can we take her? Sure. He gulped his Coke, wishing he'd sipped it earlier, but not wanting to seem selfish. Her sorority mattered to her, so it mattered to him. They waited at the door as he pulled the car up. Marissa started toward him, but Judy hung back, climbing into the driver's side to avoid him. He went around the front of the car to keep his distance. At the sorority house, Judy slid across the back seat to exit behind Marissa. I'll walk Judy to the door, Marissa said. She returned alone, a rare moment without an escort from the porch. Now what? She asked, shutting her door. Want to head home? He meant his place, hoping she'd stay. Yeah. In his room, with the door locked, they shared a long kiss. When he reached for her dress, she stopped him. No, let me. She hung it carefully in her closet space. He stripped to his casual clothes and hung up his suit. She wore her sweater and skirt to the bathroom, shoes on to protect her tights. Oddly, she returned still dressed, though he'd heard the toilet flush. He'd turned on the bedside lamp and switched off the overhead light. After a quick bathroom trip, he found her in bed. They started with a kiss. He wanted to pull the covers down to kiss her shoulders, but worried it'd make her cold. Instead, he kissed her face and neck, his hand tracing her arm and side. When his hand felt warm enough, he rested it on her hip, then gently brushed her arm again. Their kiss deepened, but it felt like their closeness above and below the covers was separate, even if only they knew it. When she tensed, he lifted his head to watch her in the lamplight. Her face shifted from curious to intense, then softened into a warm smile. Lovely girl, he said, resting his hand on her shoulder. He kissed her face gently, letting her catch her breath. Delightful woman. As she relaxed, he stroked her arm again. When she tensed once more, she reached for his hand, pulling it close. Oh, she said, her body shifting under his touch. He deepened the kiss, savoring her closeness. Darling Marissa, he whispered as she relaxed completely. He kissed her shoulder, then her ear, nibbling gently. As her breathing slowed, he stroked her arm again, moving to kiss her chin, nose, and forehead before finding her lips. He tugged the covers with his left hand, ducking to kiss her shoulder. She stiffened again as he lingered there. Aaron, she said, tugging his shoulders. She wanted him closer. He wanted that too. Get the covers, he said, shifting so they stayed warm. She pulled the blankets tight, sealing out the cold. He positioned himself carefully, sliding close as she pulled him in. His head emerged from the covers, and he kissed her forehead. Her warmth surrounded him as they moved together, her hands sweeping from his shoulders to his back. He held her close, wanting every moment to last. Her grip tightened, pulling him nearer. He was ready to savor her fully, not desperate, not rushed, just present. Her hands urged him closer, and as she tensed, he moved with more purpose, holding her shoulders gently. She shifted beneath him, her warmth enveloping him. He moved twice more, then sank into her embrace, overwhelmed. Marissa, he said, as they collapsed together. When he rolled to his side, the covers shifted, letting in a chilly draft. Sorry, he said, catching his breath. You're keeping most of me warm, she teased. Try moving the covers when I lift. He shifted slightly, and she tugged the blankets, sealing out the cold. He felt her adjust them again, closing the last gap. What time is it? She asked. He rolled to check his watch on the nightstand, pulling the covers to keep them warm. 8:45. I'm cooking breakfast, she said, starting to get up. He grabbed his glasses to watch her. There's a shirt on the chair if you're cold. She slipped it on, the hem nearly reaching her knees, offering a glimpse of her legs as she moved. Do you have eggs? Huh. No. He made the bed, knowing she'd expect it. Butter? Margarine? No. Do we need them? She'd shopped for dinner, so he figured she'd have gotten anything she wanted. He was happy to pay but couldn't guess her needs. What do you put on your toast? She asked. No toaster. No bread either. Why do you keep sugar in the fridge? Her sudden shift in topic was a relief from the why don't you have questions. Ants, he said. Landlord warned me. They like sugar. A sugar canister keeps them out. So does a fridge. Besides, it came with the apartment. I don't use much space in it. What were you planning for breakfast? Do you like cornflakes? I've got Wheaties and Cheerios too. Quite a variety for a guy without bread, she said, a hint of sarcasm in her voice. The cornflakes are open, but I didn't know what you'd want. I've got several bowls too. She laughed. Aaron, you're impossible. He set the table, grabbing everything but the cereal. Which do you want? Cornflakes are fine. He seated her and loosened the clumpy sugar before passing it. I need a robe, she said. Yeah. He wanted her to feel at home, but hesitated to suggest she keep things there, knowing she'd resisted moving in. Should I buy you one? Mine's dirty. I'll get the robe. Grab a pencil and paper. Her tone was firm, like a teacher organizing a classroom. He complied. Did you like me staying over? Yeah. Even without the deeper moments, having her beside him was perfect. I did too. But before I stay again, you need to get a dozen eggs, a pound of butter, a sugar canister. Coffee. I have instant, he admitted. Can I have some? He made coffee for both, noting she took milk. He'd ask if she wanted creamer later. Bread and a toaster, she added. He scribbled it down. Toothbrush too. I'll get that, she said. I should have thought of that, he said, kicking himself. He'd been dreaming of her staying over since he moved in. Aaron, I should have thought of it. How do you live like this? The food, I mean. You eat well at home, don't you? Sure. Dad makes coffee. Mrs. Bryant cooks great dinners, lunches when I'm there, and sack lunches for school or work. Weekends, we might eat something cold, go out, or order in. There are leftovers for snacks. I wonder what happens to them now that I'm here. So why don't you eat like that here? I can't cook like that, can't cook at all, really. Okay, she said, I've seen that. But you can heat up cans, serve them in a bowl, cook veggies, put them in another bowl, make a salad. That's eating well. You have to eat veggies and salad or fruit, or you'll get sick. But not all at once. What did you eat for lunch yesterday? How'd you eat it? Well, beef stew is covered with fat on top if you eat it without heating. I had beef stew for lunch. I put the can in the saucepan and heated it up. Since I was in the kitchen, I ate it there. Then, I came out and cut off a chunk of cabbage and ate that. I did cabbage instead of peas because I'd used the saucepan. You ate in the kitchen? She asked. Standing up? Well, the choice was to stand or to sit on the stove top or the sink. Sure. I was alone. And do you eat standing up when you're in Evanston? Only snacks. Snacks only. Mrs. Bryant tells me to sit down if she's going to fix something for me. Not every time. She told me years ago, but it's a rule. Aaron, do you eat most of your meals in this apartment standing up? Not breakfast, he said. I've got a bowl then, and it's easier to sit down. Well, you have a plate at dinner, don't you? She asked. Here? Not unless you're here. Anyway, except for breakfast. This table is usually covered in books and stuff. I don't have anywhere else to study. I clear a place every night so I can get breakfast without thinking about it. Okay, if you're worried about ants, you should rinse out the bowls now. Don't bother with my cup. I'll have another cup before I go. Okay, she was giving directions. That was one hell of a lot better than expecting him to guess her rules. While he was rinsing off the dishes, she went into the John. When he heard the shower running, he could picture her. Well, reality was better than imagination, and touch was better than seeing. Besides, she might not know which towels were hers. He took his glasses and watch off again and followed her in. Aaron, let me wash you. She didn't resist, so he started. She was just as nice to touch through a film of soap. You can do your face. I'm afraid of getting soap in your mouth. The closer washcloth is yours. She washed him too. Then, they dried each other. He was glad he'd left plenty of leeway in his morning timeline. Drying himself usually took maybe 1 minute. Drying Marissa gently took much longer, and she couldn't dry him until he was done. She went back into the John when she'd put everything on but her dress. That made her even better to watch, but she closed the door. So he put on his own clothes. He'd got to his pants when she came back out. You gave me a hickey eye, she complained. So he had. Well, someone had, and he hoped nobody else had his mouth there. I did. Darling, I'm sorry. She finished dressing and went back into the John again. She fussed in front of the mirror and then came out. He'd finished dressing except for the suit coat and the outer stuff. It wasn't time to go, though. Maybe I set the alarm too early, he said. Well, better too early than too late. Aaron, you've got to eat like other people do. I do? Why? It's only sensible, she said. Now, that he could deal with. Maybe she'd explain the reasons. Sensible reasons were what was missing from too many shoulds. What way should I eat? You ate in a borrowed shirt. You wouldn't do that in your sorority house, would you? What rules should I obey at home alone? Well, for one, you need a plate for your food. You can't eat out of a can. She wasn't explaining why that was sensible, and it didn't look sensible to him. Seemed to be a way to waste food and wash more plates. Of course, he'd asked her for ways, not explanations. Maybe they could get the explanations for those rules. She seemed to think of them together. And that's sensible? He asked. Why? It means more to wash, and I can't catch my own germs, can I? Besides, every time you put food in another container, you waste some, not much, but some. So why did other people waste things like that? Conspicuous consumption? Seemed to be neither conspicuous nor all that much consumption. Don't you like my eating breakfast with you in that shirt? Compared to what? He'd loved it, but he would have preferred it without the shirt. Still, she'd have been freezing, and that wouldn't have been fun. Sure. Well, since it was a chilly day, Aaron, I'm not going to eat a meal in my birthday suit. You see enough of me already. Not enough, he said. Never enough. We took a shower together. He hadn't denied that he'd seen her, just said that it wasn't enough. Yeah, that was fun. Aaron, you're insatiable. About you. Want more coffee now? He made her some. She was all dressed up and made up, and he knew better than to try kissing her in that state. But he held out his hand. She took it, and they sat like little school kids holding hands till she looked at her watch. Want to go? She asked. Sure. Wait in the hallway till I get the car. It's away. They both donned their last layers and went to church. They were a little early, but Bess Norton was there before them. She hauled Marissa out somewhere for some sort of female consultation. Marissa got back in time to sit with him, though. He left her at her sorority afterwards. He headed home to finish reading ahead in the anthro book. In the middle of reading about how the Hopi behaved for his anthro course, Aaron had an insight. The Hopi all followed a set of rules, and there was a book mentioned in the text that laid out those rules, a book for anthropologists. Hopi apparently weren't given the rules all neatly set down any more than Aaron had been. Maybe anthropologists had written down the rules for American culture, too. That would be a great help. He was always running afoul of some rule that hadn't been laid down. Professor Kozak had office hours on Tuesday, and he went to see him then. Professor, are there any anthro books on American culture? Well, there are a great many on Native Americans, and there are also some on minority groups. There are Mormon split-offs who still practice polygamy, and they've been studied. I mean mainstream American culture, like you and me. There is a field called urban anthropology. At one point, we left that to sociologists, but they didn't ask quite the same questions. It's really not my field, but if that's where you want to write your term paper, it's a very good idea. There is a great deal of work done comparing one culture with another from published reports of both, but real anthropology starts with field studies. And a field study for a term paper would be great. You'd have to work on a tiny segment, one fraternity, the interactions of one sports team, something like that. Those, Aaron could tell, were only examples, and examples that were particularly inappropriate for him. On the other hand, if he knew the unwritten rules, he wouldn't be here. Such a paper looked like a guaranteed way to fail. That wasn't really what I had in mind. I wanted to read something to let me know the unwritten rules of this culture. I'd be content with the unwritten laws of the U of I. Well, we have a good library. Look up urban anthropology and follow your nose. The shelves are divided between circulating and reference books, and you should check out both sorts of shelves. Do you know how to get books on related areas in the library? Yeah, libraries, I can deal with. Libraries were easy to deal with. They wrote down all their rules. People, with rules far more complicated than the Library of Congress numbers, kept their rules secret. All right, urban anthropology. And good luck. At a guess, and, as I said, it's not my field. You'll only find very narrow studies. How bus drivers interact with each other and with their passengers and bosses, that sort of thing. Not like a book on the Hopi, but about us instead? I wouldn't expect that. Maybe some anthropologist from Mars would write such a book, but there don't seem to be any Martian anthropologists. Well, thank you, Professor. I'll check out the library. And he did, without much luck. Before he went, though, he found out what were the more usual subjects for a term paper. Marissa was too busy with her sorority that week to see him, or, at least, that was the story. Actually, it was her period. That she didn't say so was one of the unwritten rules he didn't understand. Sure, what was happening in her genitals was something she didn't want to discuss with a casual acquaintance, especially a casual male acquaintance. But he'd been in her genitals. It wasn't as though his acquaintance with her was still casual. On the other hand, it was only one of a million rules he didn't understand. She wore lipstick for a date with him, fine. She didn't want him to see her without her makeup. But, if something happened that meant he did see her without it, she put her lipstick on in front of him. Saturday was a study day and a study night. His only term paper would be in anthro, but the engineering courses would each have a project. He wasn't far enough along to start on one of those, and they required a partner. He would start on the anthro paper instead. Many cultures had cross cousins as the preferred marriage partners, sometimes nearly the required ones. Well, the father's sister's child or the mother's brother's child was not only a small pool, it was likely to be unbalanced pool. What happened then? Then, too, most of these cultures had grooms significantly older than brides. What happened to the late-arriving son of a youngest son? It depended on culture, but all the cultures they'd seen in class or in the book had workarounds. Labeling a cross-cousin seemed to be a reasonable comparative topic. He went to the library to look up studies of individual cultures. Then he looked in the index. When he found some reference to cross-cousins, He put the book on his stack. Of 10 books, probably 5 would give him something he could use. When he had 10 books on his stack, he checked them out at the desk. For almost the first time, the car was a help in his study life. He could have walked to the library, but carrying all those books, he would have staggered home. Aaron grabbed a book and headed to the laundromat. Back at his apartment, he dumped the laundry bag onto his bed and returned to his studies. He marked his place in the book and added it to his keeper pile. Spreading out his books, he dove into research on marriage patterns and how societies addressed numerical imbalances in finding partners. When hunger struck, he heated a can of beef stew in a saucepan of water. He had a fresh head of lettuce, but decided to finish the old cabbage first, cutting off chunks to munch on while the stew warmed. Cold beef stew was unappetizing, with unappealing fat on top. He ate another portion and returned to his work at the table. Engrossed in the intricacies of Tiwi marriage customs, he didn't hear the door until it swung open. It was Marissa. Marissa? He hadn't expected her. Why hadn't she called? The room wasn't tidied for her visit. "Tada," she announced, her entrance dramatic but unclear in purpose. She shed her coat, closed the door, and continued with a playful "Tada?" as she removed her scarf, then her loose sweater. Even with a sweatshirt underneath, her theatrics piqued his curiosity. When she peeled off the sweatshirt, revealing just a light shirt, he moved toward her. He tried to hug her, but she guided his arms up for a quick embrace around her shoulders. They shared a warm kiss. As they kissed, she playfully tugged at his belt, loosening it and nudging his pants down slightly. What was she up to? Soon, it was clear she was teasing him with her bold, playful affection. The gesture surprised him. It was so unlike her usual reserved demeanor. The warmth of her closeness was overwhelming, and he hadn't expected this side of Marissa. "You don't have to do this," he said, not wanting her to feel obligated. He loved her affection, but worried she might think he expected it. Still, he rested a hand on her shoulder, partly for balance, partly to keep her close. She continued her playful teasing, her warmth drawing him in as his excitement built. When it peaked, she stepped back, laughing, and darted to the bathroom. He heard her rinsing her mouth. Then she dashed to the kitchen for a glass of water, returning to the bathroom to rinse again. "You're not exactly sweet as Sierran, you know," she teased, emerging with a grin. It had been her idea, and while he hadn't objected enjoying it thoroughly, he hadn't asked for it. "Sorry about that," he said with a chuckle. "Next month, I won't twist your arm like I did this time." "Okay, it was my idea," she admitted, still smiling. "Just, you're not as sweet as I expected." Her words hinted she hadn't done this with anyone else, which reassured him. "Next month?" she asked, her voice rising. He realized his mistake. He'd assumed this was tied to her period. He enjoyed her playfulness, but it wasn't a replacement for their usual closeness. He'd blundered by mentioning it, knowing she was sensitive about the topic. "Look, Marissa, I'm your Aaron. I learned from books, not experience. I don't know what your period feels like, but I know it's every 4 weeks. I shouldn't have brought it up." He hadn't meant to. It just slipped out. He wasn't great at keeping quiet. "For how long?" she asked. She must have meant how long he'd known about her cycle. "Well, remember when you wore nylons instead of pantyhose? One date, you switched back. I was worried I'd done something wrong. Then, when you wore nylons again, I figured it out. And you never said anything?" First, he was wrong for mentioning it. Now, for not mentioning it. "You didn't say anything either. It's your body, your choice. You wouldn't want to be close to me during that time," she said, sounding defensive. "Now you're putting words in my mouth. If you don't want closeness now, I get it. It's just 1 week in 4, and it's not like you're choosing someone else over me. But it's your call. I always want to be close to you. I love you, not just sometimes, always." "Aaron, you're weird," she said, but her tone was fond. He couldn't argue with that. He often felt the rest of the world was the odd one. Still, he hadn't been that weird here. "Well, yes, but loving you isn't the weird part. Speaking of closeness, can you stay tonight? You've got church dresses in the closet." "I don't have any tampons," she said. "An easy fix. Want me to run out and get some?" If she put her coat on, she'd layer up again, and who knew when she'd relax. "Aaron, you're not buying tampons," Marissa said firmly. "I'll get them." Well, that ended any chance of lingering closeness for now, but her company was more than enough. And, implicitly, she was agreeing to stay. "I'll walk you to the store," he offered. She dressed, and they headed to the narcotics store. Back at the apartment, he put away his laundry and handed hers over for her to store. The box of tampons went into her drawer. That night, she slept beside him, setting a playful boundary that he couldn't touch her below the waist. The rule only applied to his hands, though. They woke early, with no plans for deeper intimacy, and shared a warm shower. She cooked while he watched, appreciating her movements. She dressed casually, swapping her usual outfit for a robe, before starting the meal. Sunday afternoon, Aaron returned to his anthropology books. None fully explained Marissa's complexity, but they'd crossed one unspoken barrier. He hoped she'd stay over the next Saturday night, too, especially since she'd left her tampons in the drawer. Holding her in his arms had been surprisingly restful, despite the spark of excitement her presence always brought. How could someone so captivating bring such calm? It was almost frustrating in its quiet perfection. The week went smoothly in class. He got a test back in PDE. Professor Lundgren didn't assign letter grades, but Aaron's 92 seemed like a territory, especially amid classmates' grumbles. Several library books weren't useful for his paper topic, so he returned them, picking 2 more with cross-cousin in the index. Life felt good, like the carefree youth others claimed high school had been. Aaron was healthy, focused, and free from the high school bullies who hadn't made it to college or had matured. Passing them in a small high school's halls, sharing gym classes, had been tough. At a sprawling university, they were just faces in a crowd. The academic types who mourned the anonymity of large lecture halls probably hadn't been bullies, just clueless. His engineering and math classmates knew him, but to others, he was just another student, which spared him a lot of hassle. His final gym course lumped in his mind with high school PE had been surprisingly pleasant, and his last distribution course was proving fun. What Aaron didn't realize was that school felt better because he had more time for it. He'd dropped activities he'd only done because others called them fun, and his mental exercises now doubled as engineering homework. He spent less waking time on Marissa, though their moments together were more enjoyable. She was with him more often, but much of that time was spent sleeping. Their moments of connection were only slightly more frequent, yet sharing them with her made them special. He still dreamed of a future together, but worried about her less. Living on his own meant handling food and housing, tasks the university once covered, but he kept effort minimal. Beyond staying fed and dressed, he focused on school, and Marissa, though her sorority limited their time. One weekly visit meant changing bed linens, tidying the room, and washing dishes. He reused his cereal bowl, cup, glass, and silverware, only changing clothes when expecting Marissa, except for daily underwear swaps. He shaved with an electric razor each morning and used a blade before dates or Sunday mornings with her. When he drove to Zeta House to pick her up, Aaron felt content with life. Marissa came downstairs with an armful of books, but he barely noticed, too caught up in the joy of seeing her. They shared a warm embrace, though she slipped out of bed sooner than he'd hoped, leaving him wishing to hold her longer. "It's not fair, I know," she said, "but I'm behind in 3 of my classes. Tomorrow, I'll catch up in 1, but I've brought the books for the others with me." Just why that was unfair, he couldn't see. He'd rather see her writhe on his bed until he was erect again, but they never spent their time that way. If they weren't going to spend their time in sex, but were going to spend their time together, what the activity they did together hardly mattered. "Well, we are in school after all. We'll study together different subjects but across from each other. I haven't even planned out the dinner." That a dinner needed planning was another of Marissa's odd opinions. She was too sexy to argue with, but some of her notions were very strange. "Want me to open a can? The one in the refrigerator had his germs. Besides, there was only 1 serving left. I won't go that far. I'll cook, but I'll cook from your cans. What did you eat last?" "Beef stew." "Why?" "So I don't cook it." "Why not?" If she insisted on heating the food, that was one that needed it. Besides, she ate less than he did, and most of the other stuff came in 2 meal cans. Leftover beef stew, including the can in the fridge, would be easier to break into meals. Why not? It's really one that needs heating. The others don't. Besides it, and the baked beans come in the largest cans. Having you here to eat one makes sense. "Aaron, you can't eat the same thing 2 nights in a row." Usually he didn't. "Why not?" "Not that I do it all that often. Like I said, only baked beans and beef stew. Usually I start a can at lunchtime and finish it for dinner, or vice versa." Despite the explanation, she cooked lasagna as well as veggies and a fancy salad. When he cleaned the dinner dishes off the table, she set her books down in her place. He got out one of the anthro books, which would be really useful for the paper. He started the cards. He'd been going to wait until he'd sorted out all the books he wanted, but that would take too much table space the way he worked. Studying across from her was fun, and he could look at her and see how pretty she looked when she was concentrating and how she fit in. She even had her regular spot at the table in this apartment. Hours passed. 10 o'clock, Aaron announced, glancing at the clock. "Need more study time? Want to call it a night?" Marissa asked. He was eager to spend time with her, but he didn't want to sound too forward. "Let's," he agreed. She began peeling off her layers, a process less interactive than if he'd helped, but still a joy to watch. It was quicker, too, and the chilly night called for speed. She took her time in the bathroom, but emerged wrapped in a towel, darting to the bed and slipping under the covers, a charming sight. After his own quick bathroom trip, he joined her. She was watching him with a playful smile, and he figured turnabout was fair play. She could watch him as much as she wanted, just as he loved watching her. His hands were cold, so he stuck to kisses at first. They'd probably been cold in the car too, but now they had time. As his hands warmed, he reached around to rub her back gently. When she lay back, he kissed her forehead. She relaxed under his touch, and if his hands felt chilly to her, she didn't mention it. He could sense her easing into the moment. When he shifted to kiss her cheek, she seemed ready, her body softening. Under the covers, he caught the familiar scent of her perfume. As she grew more relaxed, he moved his head out from the blankets to watch her face. Her expression shifted to a focused intensity, her body lifting slightly against his hand. "Marissa," he said softly as she shifted beside him, her face showing a brief tension before softening. Her body settled back against the mattress. Her expression melted from intensity to a warm, contented smile. He watched her relax, nearly drifting to sleep, while his arm felt her breathing slow. "I love you," he said, meaning it fully. He adored every side of her, but especially these quiet, close moments. He began rubbing her shoulder again, and she leaned into it, welcoming his touch. As she grew more focused, her expression turning thoughtful, she reached for his hand. He wanted her closeness even more, but worried too much contact might overwhelm the moment. He gently shifted to keep things calm. "Okay," he said, not wanting her to think he was pulling away. He moved to lie beside her, pulling the covers over them both. "Like this?" She nodded, and he settled closer, feeling her warmth. "Oh, Marissa." Her presence enveloped him as they lay close. He kissed her, lifting slightly to watch her face as they shared the moment. "Love you," he said, cherishing her warmth, her spirit, her willingness to be close. "Love you," she replied, her body meeting his with gentle movements, tucking the covers around them both with care. He watched her face, catching her glance down at their closeness. She always looked lovely, but in that moment, her expression was full of affection. Then a flicker of intensity crossed her face, her body shifting closer. "Oh, my love," he said, moving with her. "Oh, my love," he repeated, caught in the moment. "Oh," he murmured as the warmth of their connection overwhelmed him. He collapsed beside her, resting partly on his elbows but mostly against her softness. They lay there, catching their breath, her warmth steady against him. When he found the strength, he rolled to his side, facing her. "Want to lie in my arms?" he asked. She, the delightful woman, shifted back until he was holding her. After adjusting the covers once more, he hugged her close and drifted off. In the morning, she felt wonderful beside him, but he knew he needed to freshen up. He hurried to the bathroom, took care of necessities, shaved, and brushed his teeth. When he returned, she took her turn, looking charming as she walked there and back. He set his glasses on the nightstand, and they shared a kiss. She leaned into it warmly, but afterward, she slipped on her robe and started cooking breakfast. That, too, was a treat. "I like your breakfasts better than mine," he said, grinning. "Well, I enjoy cooking for you." "Aaron, do you think I do a lot for you?" "Yeah," he said easily. "Would you do something for me?" "Sure." If he could, he would. "Not so fast. Remember when you warned me to ask what the favor was before agreeing to your dad's requests?" "Good advice, though I don't recall giving it. But that's Dad. I love you, and important for agreeing to something blind, I think you love me too." "You think your dad doesn't love you?" "Not in that way." "Well, not the usual way, but for agreeing to a request, love means something different. I love you, and I think you love me, in a unique way. But this trust I'm talking about comes from wanting what's best for each other. Dad wants what he thinks is best for me, not always what I want. Bargaining with him is fun, but I wouldn't enjoy that kind of tussle with you." "I don't have anything to bargain with," she said. "I'll stay with you whether you agree or not." That was heartwarming to hear. He hadn't thought she'd leave, but her saying so was new. "That's nice to hear. Next time, maybe the time after, I'll bring a list. You can read it and tell me if you're on board." "Okay, sure." If it was a list of things he could do, he'd do them. Did she want him to tutor again next semester? He'd cleared it with her before saying no, but he'd be fine with it. Changing her mind was her right, as long as she didn't change her mind about him. After church, he dropped her off at Zeta House and returned to his studies. He stayed on top of classes, finishing homework the night after each lecture. Marissa had brought books with her, and he wanted her to feel free to study there. Still, he wasn't sure if they'd study together or not, so he focused on flexible tasks. On Friday, he hit the library for more anthropology books to support his paper, knowing he could return them unread without a teacher noticing. She was so lovely, he wanted her to feel comfortable there. He bought a long mirror and hung it inside the closet door, a spot the hardware store clerk, John, said was common for mirrors. Some classmates were buzzing about politics. It was his first presidential election as a voter, and he didn't want to miss it. Registering in Evanston seemed like a hassle, especially with absentee ballots, so he registered in Champaign instead. When he picked Marissa up, she had one book with her, but she had him stop at the grocery, meaning she was less frazzled than the week before. That was good. He didn't want her time with him dragging down her grades. She picked out the food, pork chops and potatoes, and he paid at the cash register. After their sex, he put on his glasses and came to the table to watch her cook. The meal was delicious. Afterwards, she got one piece of paper instead of her book. "Remember when I said I might have a list of things I'd ask from you?" she asked. "Yeah, well, here's the list." She handed it to him. "Okay, as long as Marissa shares the apartment with Aaron part of the time, Aaron will follow these rules in the apartment all the time. Every meal is eaten off plates. The plates are washed rather than used for another meal. So is any silverware used washed after use. Lunch and dinner each require a vegetable and a salad. Salads are placed on a separate plate. Main dishes are heated in the pan or cooked some other way and served in a serving dish. You sit at the table to eat any meal in the apartment." Well, that was less than he'd thought it would be. More than that, she'd given him what Professor Kozak hadn't been able to. This was the rules of this strange society, incomplete, of course. If not that, they were the rules of keeping on Marissa's good side, and that was really more important. He had only one question: wash dishes after every meal. Even with the paraphernalia she required for a simple meal, that was damn few dishes. No, I try to be careful to not say that. You rinse them off and leave them in the sink. Every day, maybe every other day for a single person, you wash them. Leaving the dishes to pile up in the sink until you run out of dishes is considered slovenly, but with the number of dishes you have, it wouldn't be all that slovenly. Okay, what does that mean? I'll try to keep all these rules. No argument, no bargaining, over this. No, one of the things I want is to keep you happy. Two things, really. I want your happiness, and I want you to be happy to be around me. I figure that this will contribute to both, and it doesn't look all that hard. He'd said that very badly, but she didn't look dissatisfied. She got her book, and they sat down across from each other to study. He couldn't pile up the books as he had before, because that would take her space, but he kept them in 3 piles on the floor unchecked: keep and take back. And, whether his agreement had sweetened her temper or not, she responded passionately when they were finally in bed together. The love Sunday morning was equally sweet. He'd thought of bringing up the football game the next week on their drive after church, but it was a legitimate reason to call and hear her voice. He called Monday night. A pledge answered the phone and went to get her. "Marissa Grant speaking." She had the sweetest voice. "Love you. Likewise. This Saturday is a home game. Are we going?" "Why, Aaron, I'd love to. Thank you very much. Give rides to a few others?" "Sure." He didn't mind filling the back seat and taking them to the sorority house afterwards, just so long as Marissa didn't get out when they did. They talked for a minute about other things, but he didn't get to hear her voice for long. "Love you, but I've got to run." "Love you too." And he hung up the phone. Marissa had 3 friends with her when he picked her up before the game. Afterward, they left the car when he drove Marissa back to the Zeta house, but she rode home with him. The room was warm enough for her to stand comfortably as he gently held her. He took her to the mirror in the closet to show her how beautiful she looked. With the mirror, he could watch her expressions and feel her close in his arms. Even she admitted she looked lovely and radiant. Her cheeks flushed softly, a glow he noticed reflected back at them. Then he carried her to the bed and kissed her tenderly many times before they simply lay together, wrapped in a quiet embrace. She eventually got up to get dressed, ready to study and prepare dinner. Dinner was delicious, but he would have enjoyed more time together just relaxing side by side. That night, and again the next morning, she rested in his arms, moving gently as they shared those quiet moments. They didn't get to use the mirror again, but that didn't matter. He had her for 3 Saturdays out of 4. The sorority had her the other days of the week. He tried to be with her the 4th Saturday, too, holding her close when they couldn't spend more time together. She only let him pick her up and drive her to church on those days. One Tuesday was election day. He voted right after class, and the line wasn't too long. He voted for Carter and decided to give him the congressman and senatorial candidate from his party. He didn't know anything about the local issues. He was an Evanstonian. Really, so he left the other offices blank. That Saturday, he thought about mentioning the election, but since she didn't, he didn't either. When they didn't go to home football games or university dances, they studied across from one another. That was her choice, but he was perfectly happy with it. As long as she slept in his arms, how they spent the rest of the time together was less important. He enjoyed making love to her, but he'd give that up if he could still have the company. Then that company was taken away. Hell Week was a sorority activity when the full members made lives even worse for the pledges than they had for the previous months. But the pledges at least got Marissa's attention. He didn't, not for 2 Saturdays in a row. aside from missing her company, that reminded him that the sorority was more important in her life than he was. "I'm not leaving you, you know," she said on the last phone call he was allowed. "You have left me," he pointed out. "Promise that you'll come back." "I'll come back." He believed her. But, as the week without her went by, he couldn't spend all his time studying. He believed that she would return to him this time. But theirs was a college romance, and their college years were more than half over. He needed her in his life, and he sensed that expressing how much he needed her was likely to frighten her off. He needed her in his present, but he needed her in his future, too. Not only would he need her company in the life after college, he needed right now the assurance that he would have that company. And, without her presence, the absence of that assurance left an aching void in his life. The problem was that he didn't have anything to exchange for that assurance. He couldn't support her. He would be able to later on, although she was much more interested in supporting herself than in his supporting her. But, now, he didn't have that support to exchange for the assurance of a future with her. And, worst of all, even his future support was nothing more than scores of other men could better and hundreds could match. Marissa wasn't a gold digger. She had never compared his to any other guy's future earnings. She even planned to earn her own way in teaching. But that didn't mitigate the weakness of his appealing to his future earning capacity when that wasn't impressive. He was coming to the end of the quarter. Each of the EE courses had an obvious continuation. So did the Anthro course, for that matter, but having fulfilled his last distribution requirement, he wasn't going to take it. That gave him one course next quarter and a wealth of choices for his senior year. He needed advice. Professor Abrams, who seemed the better of the teachers dealing with the sort of EE he wanted, had office hours on Tuesday. He went to him. "Yes, Aaron Turner. I'm in your noon class today." "Yes, Mr. Turner. Do you have a problem?" He recognized him well enough to seem surprised that he had trouble with the assignment. "Well, he didn't. Not with the immediate class, with my future classes. I can take one more engineering class next quarter, and I have a wide choice my senior year. I'd like to make those choices wisely, so I came to someone who knows the field." "You're interested in power or in information?" "Definitely information, and that means transistors in the 20th century. Well, the 20th century began well before the transistor. They did marvelous things with vacuum tubes at one time. Read up on proximity fuses some time. But, really you're right. Unless you want some sort of museum position, you want transistors. Really, you know, the department has reasons for its standard courses. Yeah, I'll follow recommendations, except for PDE. But I'll clean up my distribution requirements this quarter. I'll have to take extra courses, and I'd like to know which ones. Really, partial differential equations are fairly necessary for any sort of electrical design beyond the cookbook." "Yes, sir. I'm taking PDE this year. Started with AP Calculus in high school." "Oh, well, read the catalog for what you have the prerequisites for. I'm on the committee, and we won't change the courses much next year. That's not much of a secret. How's your GPA? Last 5 quarters on Dean's list. For science and math, I have mostly AS. I did have trouble in Calc 201 and in drafting. The calc was because the AP Calc was a little less preparation than I'd thought it was." "How bad was the trouble?" "Be both times." "Well, you would need permission to take any graduate-level course. I think you could get that permission if you had the prerequisites. That's assuming, of course, that your grades keep up. Look, I might be just blowing my own horn, but given that 2 courses fit your needs, I'd take the one taught by the younger instructor. It's like this. When I was in school, transistors already existed and were in use, although not as ubiquitous as now. The guys who taught me, with a few exceptions, had themselves learned when vacuum tubes were the standard, the only way to handle that sort of problem. They were smart. They weren't resistant. They taught us that transistors could handle almost all the problems that tubes could, but they thought in terms of tubes. We learned to handle problems with transistors, but the teachers were thinking tubes and replacing each tube in his head with a transistor that would do the same thing. Well, guys of my generation learned to think in terms of transistors. Some of my contemporaries, not me, or I'd be eating caviar for breakfast, figured out better ways to solve particular problems. They asked themselves what the inputs were and what the outputs needed to be. Sometimes, the best way to get those outputs from those inputs with transistors were ways that you couldn't do directly with tubes. So, transistors are still evolving. I should go with the teachers who've evolved with them. That's not quite what I was saying. We've all evolved with them. Go with the guys who haven't had to evolve so much. For that matter, I'll predict that you'll spend your career struggling to keep up with the field." Aaron thanked him and went back to his current studies. These weren't decisions which had to be made today. The extra class he wanted to take, however, would influence which sections of the regular classes he took. He wrote the first draft of his anthropology paper, labeling across Cousin Tuesday and Wednesday night. He reviewed all the previous work in his engineering classes. He even caught up on his SF. He'd started with 2 issues of Analog barely read. He attended 2 church services by himself and apologized for Marissa's absence. He did a load of colored laundry. During all of that, his problems with Marissa still bugged him. Finally, she called him Sunday. Want to pick me up after class on Monday? She wasn't even waiting for Saturday. When do you get out? 5 o'clock. It's a late one. Clark Hall. This was wonderful. She was coming back to him, and they should celebrate. Monday, he looked for a restaurant for the celebration. He washed the dishes and made the bed after he got home. He didn't know where her class was in Clark Hall, so he waited between the main staircase and the door. Mind stopping by the house for a few minutes? She asked as soon as the car had started. I want to change over to tomorrow's books. Then we'll pick up the groceries. She sounded in a hurry, so he merely let her out in front of the door instead of walking her in. He parked the car in the Zeta lot and waited downstairs for her. Enough of the girls in the hall recognized him that they didn't ask what he was doing inside the house. She stopped 2 steps up from the bottom for a kiss. Then he took the books and they went to the car. She had her plans, and he wouldn't insist that she change them, but he did want the celebration. Would you consider a change of plans? He asked. This is something to celebrate. Would you be willing to go out to a restaurant? Don't like my cooking? That was silly. He loved her cooking and enjoyed watching her cook even more. Your cooking is fine for me. Maybe it's more work than celebration for you. So, though he couldn't watch her cook, he did watch her eat in the restaurant. He drove her home and carried her books up to the apartment. The room was chilly, so they each shed their coats and scarves quickly, foregoing their usual playful ritual of helping each other undress in front of the mirror. Marissa looked radiant as she slipped into his bed. Once she was tucked under the covers, Aaron joined her on his side, trading the sight of her for the warmth of her presence. Overwhelmed with gratitude for her return, he couldn't help but kiss her, then kiss her again, each one a quiet celebration. Oh, Marissa, you came back, he murmured, feeling the warmth of her skin against his as he pressed kisses across her face. After a lingering kiss, his lips brushed her forehead and cheek, then trailed to her shoulder. He ducked under the covers to kiss her collarbone, wanting to cherish every part of her return. He continued, kissing her arm softly, savoring her closeness. Her warmth drew him back, and he kissed her shoulder again, feeling her shift closer. When she relaxed fully, he moved to her other arm, pressing gentle kisses there. When he returned to her shoulder, she tugged him up, pulling him close. If she wanted him near, he was more than happy to oblige. His heart was full, and he felt alive in her presence. Oh, love, he said, touching her cheek as their warmth melded. He slid closer, resting his forehead against hers, savoring the moment of being so near. Oh, love, he repeated as she leaned into him, her movements mirroring his. Her face reflected the same warmth he felt, her smile welcoming. He tried to move slowly, to soak in every second of their connection, but the joy of her presence urged him to hold her tighter, to feel her closer. When the intensity of the moment peaked, he wrapped her in his arms, their breaths sinking as they held each other. Her eyes sparkled, and her smile radiated warmth as she relaxed against him. When he found the strength to shift, he settled beside her, pulling her into a cozy embrace, her back pressed against his chest. Her warmth enveloped his hands, and her head rested close enough for him to kiss her hair. The glow of their reunion only deepened his awe that she was here. You came back, he said, voice soft with wonder. She was truly here, in his arms. Whatever the future held, this moment was theirs. Aaron, I'll always come back to you. That word always stirred his hopes and fears. Did she mean forever, for their lives together? Or just for now, while they were still on campus? Always. He regretted asking as soon as the word left his mouth. He wanted to stay quiet, to hold on to her promise, but he feared her answer might not match his dreams. And he had little to offer until he could support them both. That wouldn't be fair to you, he said, trying to soften his question, to keep it light. Look, do you ever think about after graduation? He asked. You're set on being a teacher, but do you ever think about whether there'll be in US after? It was the heart of his worry. If she hadn't considered it, pushing for an answer might scare her off. Well, what do you think? She asked, turning the question back on him. But his thoughts weren't the point. There's no question for me. If you can ask, you can answer, she said firmly. That's only fair. He sighed. I want as much of you as I can have. As long as you'll let me. Is this a proposal? She asked while turning around to face him. Hell no. The proposal would have to wait until he could support her. Maybe not quite. Girls wanted an engagement. But the promise of support would be one hell of a lot more credible in another year. Marry me this June was a reasonable proposal. Marry me in a year and a half was just an attempt at getting a guarantee that he couldn't reciprocate. It's not fair for me to propose when I can't support you. Well, I'm going to be a teacher, like you said, Marissa stated. I'll be able to support myself. That wasn't the point, though. Sure, she could manage as a single teacher, but plenty of teachers were married. Couldn't she consider that path? Yeah, but only after graduation, Aaron replied. We can't get married if we can't pay rent. But, do you mind if I think about it? Since it was always on his mind, her permission might forgive any accidental slips. Do you? She asked, seeing right through his attempt to frame it as a future thought. Maybe dream about it is a better term. Do you mind? No. And I'll think about it too. You will? His heart leaped. If she was open to thinking about it, he had over a year to convince her. The weight of 2 weeks' worry lifted, and gratitude overwhelmed him. He kissed her again, pulling her into a warm hug. It was gratitude, not anything else, though he felt her closeness, her warmth against him, her presence so vivid. His feelings were pure appreciation. When he ran his hand down her back, it was to connect with Marissa, not to focus on any one part of her. When his hand reached her lower back, he quickly brought it up to her neck for another gentle stroke, wanting to touch her. But she seemed to have a different idea. After a moment, she took his hand, her touch gentle but deliberate. Even though he was still catching his breath from their emotional exchange, her gesture warmed him. She shifted closer, inviting more closeness. If she wanted this, he certainly did too. As she leaned into him, he whispered, "Oh, Marissa." Her embrace was even more moving than her touch. When they were fully wrapped in each other's arms, he kissed her forehead. He loved her, and she loved him, showing it by pulling him closer. Her face shifted from warmth to intensity, and she held him tightly, moving with him in a shared rhythm. She was so loving, so captivating. "Darling, lovely Marissa," he murmured, staying close. Soon, she was caught up again, matching his movements. He tried to pace himself, wanting to share every moment with her, but the connection was too strong. He held her shoulders, pulling her close in a final, heartfelt embrace. As their emotions peaked, she moved with him, their bond deepening. He sank into her warmth, propping himself slightly to keep from overwhelming her. "I love you," he said when he'd caught his breath. He shifted them both, moving so he wasn't resting on her. "And I love you." She tugged at the blanket he'd pulled away in their shift, and he lifted himself to free it. They lay there, gazing at each other for precious minutes, lost in the moment. But soon, her eyes clouded with other thoughts. She got up, dressed, and settled at the table to study. She was in his room, in his life that was enough. He couldn't expect her to stay wrapped up in him forever. They shared studying, so he dressed too, not wanting her to think he was lingering on their closeness. With Marissa there, he made the bed before joining her at the table to study across from her. Aaron had been current on schoolwork before Marissa sequestered herself, and he'd buried himself in his books in an attempt to forget her absence. He finished the work for Wednesday, when she returned to the apartment. He then started on reviewing PDE. He was careful not to suggest a break until she clearly had had enough. Once in bed, though, all her attention was on him again. She writhed in his arms. When he moved over her, she was eager for him. After a long, slow session, she writhed under him and around him. Then she slept cuddled in his arms. Although they each visited the bathroom during the night, he was awake enough to pull her back into his arms, and she was willing enough to come. He was still holding her when the alarm rang. When he wanted to return to bed after shaving, though, she was already up. "We're heading for early classes," she said. "Control yourself, can't you?" He did get to share a shower with her, though. She was surprised that there weren't eggs to cook for breakfast, but she hadn't said that she was staying the night. They had cornflakes, and he drove her to class before he went to his own. She made another visit Thursday night. This time, he had time to shop, and she told him what to look for. Again, they started and ended the night in bed. Again, she was too distracted in the morning. But he got to watch her eat, and watch her study, and watch her soap herself in the shower. She teased him about his erection. "So, how many men have watched you shower without getting hard?" he asked. "Showers? I've never shared a shower with a male before, but I used to bathe in the same tub with a male, and he didn't get hard." That sounded damn suspicious. "What age male?" "I stopped when I was 8, she said. That would have made Peter not yet 5. Well, her 4-year-old brother. He was still jealous. Sunday morning, though, she did come back to bed. And that day, driving from church to her sorority house, she said that she could schedule 1 visit a week for the rest of the quarter. 2 a week, actually. The Saturdays are already set. Let's say Tuesday after dinner, but I might have to reschedule. There will still be chapter business. And not, of course, finals week. Finals week was quite okay. She was a student, and he didn't want to interfere with her being a good student. "I'm fine with rescheduling, as long as she was going to reschedule instead of canceling the visit entirely." Sorority business always took precedence with her, but pouting was a lousy way to win her affection. "You can call any time until I leave the apartment." "Prep week? The week before exams?" "Why not?" she asked. "I study as well with you as I do in the house. Maybe better. Are we going up for Christmas together?" "Always do. You're not thinking of driving, are you? Wasn't planning on it, he said. The roads coming back are totally unpredictable. But I don't want to make you buy a ticket. My dad works for the railroad, remember? I travel on a pass. Want to spend some time between the last exam and going up? I was hoping to. Let's schedule when we know when our last exams are. So, whatever other commitments she had, Marissa still thought of them as a couple. Aaron Turner walked out of his PDE final cautiously pleased. None of the questions had stumped him, and he'd finished in time to check every answer once before he had to turn the test in. When he got back to the apartment, he straightened it up. He took a shower and put his old clothes in the laundry bags. He shaved with a blade. When he'd finished finals in the past, he'd been unable to stop thinking about the exams. He'd taken to a binge as the solution. Now he hardly thought about the exams. There was nothing he could do if he noticed a blooper at this stage, anyway. Now, all he could think about was Marissa. She still had one exam to go, or she was already taking it. He could have picked her up outside the exam hall, but she chose otherwise. Finally, the phone rang. Aaron, it was Marissa. I love you. Should I come over now? Give me an hour. I'm not packed yet. Well, at least he had a limit to his worrying. There in an hour, he said. I love you. I love you too. He looked at his watch. 12:17. He left too much time for the drive. He really could have walked it in the time he allowed. So he spent 6 anxious minutes sitting in his car. Then he walked up to Zeta House and rang the bell. One of the members yelled, Aaron's here, Marissa, in the general direction of the stairs. Be down in a minute, answered the sweetest voice in the sorority, if louder than usual. He wasn't allowed to set foot on the stairs, but when she was within reaching distance, she stopped. He took her suitcase and book bag from her. He set the suitcase on the floor and the book bag on it. By then, she'd come down to kissing distance. They had a sweet kiss, but a short one. They'd have more without the audience. Then he picked up the bags, switched both to his right hand, and opened the door for Marissa with his left. If engineering doesn't work out, Aaron, Marissa's little sister, Beverly, said, you could make a living giving boyfriend lessons. Yeah, the academic chair answered, but would the guys pay for them? Maybe the woman's parents would, another sister said. If Gary treated me like that, Dad would stop mentioning haircuts. He was embarrassed, and the warm air was escaping while the women shared a laugh. Marissa followed him to the car, and he opened her door before putting the stuff in the back seat. See, she said when he got in the driver's seat, they all appreciate what a nice guy you are. Then she kissed him again. At the apartment, Aaron helped Marissa out of the car, grabbed her bags, opened the door, and gestured toward the stairs. As they climbed, he stayed a few steps behind, admiring the graceful way she moved. She unlocked the apartment with her key, a quiet sign, despite her protests, that she belonged there. Once inside, they shed their coats and shared a warm hug and kiss. She stopped him when he reached to help with her jacket. It's chilly, she said. Faster if we do our own. She quickly slipped out of her outer layers and slid into bed. When she was settled under the covers, he finished undressing and joined her. He ran his hands gently along her arms, careful to warm them first. Her lips were cool against his, but her warmth welcomed him as they kissed. When he ducked under the blanket, her skin was cool to his touch, but her presence radiated comfort. As he held her close, stroking her shoulder gently, he felt her tense under his touch. He lifted his head just in time to see her face shift from calm to intense, then to a soft grimace as she leaned into him, her body trembling slightly. She moved with him, her warmth enveloping him. Oh, Marissa. Oh, darling, he murmured, watching her expression soften from intensity to a peaceful, satisfied smile. She was captivating in every mood. He kissed her forehead, cheeks, and chin, avoiding her lips as she caught her breath. Her skin had a faint, warm taste, her essence, the last of her response. Sweet girl, delightful woman, he said, his voice full of affection. You're gorgeous. Are you fully packed? She asked, abruptly changing the subject. He paused, considering whether to stop holding her so closely. Yeah, you? His hand lingered on her shoulder, feeling the softness beneath her warmth. I want to bring a couple of tops I have here. I don't need to go back to the house. He didn't want her escaping to her sorority, but her clothes posed a problem. Tops sounded like blouses, likely colored ones, and he hadn't done a colored wash. They may not be clean, he admitted. I only did whites. I could do a colored load today. Aaron, if I came home with no laundry, Mom would think I'm sick. He didn't really want to head to the laundromat, not when she was here. I'm not sure you should be doing my stuff. That's ridiculous, he said. It's rarely an extra load. Just warn me if anything needs special care. Today would be a hassle, though I'd planned to spend this time with you in bed. You're impossible, she teased. Planning to keep me in bed until we leave for the train? Not all of it. We need a shower too, and I have to cook for you. Did you get the groceries on my list? Sure. Her lists were a reminder she'd return, and he always followed through. We don't need lunch for hours, he added, and with that settled, he leaned in to cherish her again. After a long, lingering kiss, he brushed his lips across her nose, ear, chin, temple, and eyebrows. Under the blanket, he kept his hand on her shoulder, tracing gentle patterns. Marissa's warmth and presence were magnetic. There was no rush. The room was cozy under the blankets, the locked door ensured privacy, and time was on their side. The train wasn't until noon tomorrow, over 21 hours away, with no pressing deadlines. Classes were weeks off, and while they'd prep eventually, there was no urgency. He could savor this closeness now, maybe again tonight, and once more in the morning. Marissa's ability to share these moments with him, her reactions so vibrant and beautiful, was a gift. And she was glowing again. He felt her tense, saw the subtle shift in her form under the covers. Her expression moved from joy to intensity, then softened as she relaxed completely, sinking into the moment. I love you, he said, adoring her fully, even if she might not realize how much her reactions captivated him. And I love you too, she replied, her calm voice a sign she was ready for more. He didn't rush, savoring every stage of her warmth. He began to hold her closer again, his touch gentle and unhurried. This time, she asked, "Are you joining me fully?" Her vibrant energy was even more captivating when they were this close, but he didn't want to rush their time together. "You're even more delightful like this," he said. Other moments were special too, but the chilly room kept them cozied up in bed. "I get the impression you're just going to hold me for the next 12 hours, she teased. "Not 12, maybe 3. Aaron." Her laugh suggested she might need a break soon, but he wasn't holding her hostage. He just wanted her back in his arms. "Well, you're so captivating like this," he admitted, unable to lie to her. He kissed her again, ready to deepen their connection. Her warmth felt even more inviting after these moments. He kissed her ear, then trailed down her neck to her shoulder, lingering there before moving to her other shoulder. Her skin shivered under his touch, and he savored her response. He paused to climb closer, kissing her arms gently. Her warmth was intoxicating, and he lingered in it. As she tensed again, she pulled him closer, her hands urging him to stay. Her reactions were vibrant, and he stayed with her, cherishing every moment. When she gently pushed him back, he rested his head on her arm, kissing it softly. To be fair, he kissed her other arm too. "No," she said, laughing. "Come closer." Would she let him stay this close? He'd have less energy if they kept going. "But we have hours," he said. "I'm making you grilled cheese sandwiches," she declared. "Now come here, or I'll start cooking now." It wasn't that he didn't want to be close. Her warmth and affection were everything. If she wanted to shift to this, he was happy to follow. Besides, it felt good to be wanted. He moved closer, pausing only to kiss her shoulders briefly. Then he was fully in her embrace, the moment so perfect he wanted to linger, but the pull of their connection drew him deeper. Her warmth enveloped him, comforting and inviting. He paused to savor it, kissing her forehead. "I love you," he said, cherishing all of her. Her arms wrapped around him, welcoming him as he lifted himself to see her face. Her expression was warm and open as they moved together. She seemed distracted as she began to match his rhythm, her hands resting on his shoulders, pulling him closer. Her face tightened, as if caught in a wave of intensity. Her grip tightened, and he leaned into her, matching her energy. She trembled, her movements heartfelt, and he moved with her one last time, overwhelmed by their connection. "Oh, Marissa," he said as she relaxed, her face softening into a peaceful smile. He came to, resting against her warmth, her hand still holding him close. She didn't resist when he shifted to the side, and he pulled her against him, her back to his chest, his hand on her shoulder, her head under his chin. They lay in that peaceful embrace for a moment. Her voice, soft and lovely, carried a teasing edge. "This is wonderful, but it's not cooking lunch." "Lunch isn't on a deadline," he replied. "We'll eat when it's ready. And dinner can be fashionably late. If we eat at midnight and stay up, I'll wake you when the alarm goes off. You can nap on the train." She stayed in his arms, considering, though not fully relaxed. Soon, she moved to get up. The room was chilly, so she wrapped herself in a nightgown, robe, and apron. He slipped on his robe and made the bed, then sat to watch her cook. Grilled cheese sandwiches, crisp outside with a warm, comforting inside, always reminded him of her. While he washed dishes, she finished packing. By the time he was done, she was back in bed, still in her nightgown. "Look," she said as he joined her, "let's talk." Talking in bed sounded perfect, but he'd rather linger in their closeness. "Okay," he said, grinning. "Do you know you have the most delightful, charming, beautiful smile?" "You wanted me to think about marriage," she said, redirecting. "I don't think we know each other well enough. We'll know each other better next year. We've got a year and a half. That's not the point. Are we compatible? How do we know? We felt pretty compatible half an hour ago. Yeah, we're great together in moments like that. But what about children? Her question caught him off guard. He could picture her as a mother someday, but not too soon, not before he had a steady job. I like kids, he said, but I'm not the one who'd carry them for 9 months. Do you even know what childcare involves? It's easy to like kids when there's someone else's cute twins, but it's different when they're your responsibility. Her challenge stung. Did she think she knew more? Now you're being hard on me, he said. I was just a kid when Molly was born, 3 when April came along. I was too young to change diapers, but I carried April around, read to her, taught her to tie her shoes. Even later, I kept looking out for her. Still do, Marissa teased. Not quite, she's decided it's not cool anymore. But I did my share of childcare. April's still my favorite, and I didn't mind the effort. Did you babysit? Does that make you an expert? Actually, I never babysat, and Pete wasn't young enough to give me your experience. Well, I've answered your question. I'm pro-kids. I may not know all the consequences, but does anyone before marriage? And I know kids are a bigger burden on you. If that's too much, I'd understand. When I picture my future, I see kids, she said. But I also see a career. I'm not sure how they fit. So, you're no clearer than I am. That's compatibility. We both don't have it all figured out. She nudged him, half laughing, but he was half serious. He hugged her closer to punctuate his point. What kind of town or neighborhood do you see yourself in? She asked. One with you in it, he said, but she wouldn't take that. Okay, as an electrical engineer, my job limits where I can work, but not as much where I live. I doubt there's work in Evanston, but I could commute from there. A rural town might not work unless it's near the right plant. City or suburb, I could find something. I just don't want to live near San Diego unless you're set on it. That's a generous restriction, she teased. What kind of house or apartment do you envision? This was getting absurd. Did she think he loved this place's quirks? Look, Marissa, you're not thinking about who I am. The house I want is one where you're happy. I don't think a house makes you happy, but it shouldn't make you miserable. He paused, searching for an analogy. I asked a professor about my career, power or electronics. I chose electronics without asking you because it's not your thing. Same with a house. I want you in it, happy. That's it. I don't even know what you're talking about, she admitted. Exactly. It's my call, like a house is yours. I just want you there with me. This apartment was special because she visited. He'd learned to make the bed because she liked things neat, not for himself. Wait, she said. When I surprised you, the bed was unmade, piled with laundry. That was temporary. I was going to tidy during a study break. But unmade at night? Had you slept in it? Nah. I sometimes read in bed, but not till later. So, you didn't make it all day, but you did for lunch today. Twice. I knew you'd see it this time. I didn't expect you last time. Did she think he was ready for surprise inspections? So, why do you make the bed? Because you'll see it. Or I think you will. Aaron, you're weird. Maybe, but he didn't think so. The point is, I want a home that makes you happy. I don't care about picket fences or shutters. I care about you being there, content. This place is my dream home right now because you're in my arms. Clean dishes just make it better because you like it. That's romantic, she said, but I'm serious. I'm serious too. Before you, my dreams were about engineering, not homes or marriage. I didn't picture a future with anyone. When you came along, I started dreaming of you, not just dates, but a life together. You didn't think about marrying me? Not at first. I was focused on getting you to say yes to the next date. When your sorority said you chose me, I was thrilled but mad at how they treated you. Only then did I think we might have a future. That was early, she said. For you? Maybe, with all your options. For me, it was a long time hoping. You carried a torch that long. I asked you out, you said no. But we were both at U of I. I hoped you'd say yes eventually, and you did. Anyway, she said, that's the past. I'm talking about the future. I care about a future with you. If that means a certain house or town, that's what I want, not because of the house, but because you're there. You picture me in the kitchen? I'm trying to keep this light, but I love watching you in the kitchen. Or studying at the table. When you're gone, I look at your things in the closet or bathroom and think, that's Marissa's. It makes this place home. And chores? How do we split them? She was still on some ideal marriage. Couldn't she see he'd do anything like making the bed just to have her here? For her in his arms every night. He'd so do whatever she wanted. Hell, Mrs. Bryant only worked 40 hours a week. Most commuters had more than that time at home. Well, let's get practical. Well, I already know how to do laundry dishes, too. There'd have to be more, but you'd have to tell me. Mrs. Bryant could probably teach me anything, and I'll have the summer. I'll be working most days when she's on, but I learned laundry. What can you cook? Like Marissa cooked? Nothing. Well, do you know those frozen pizzas? I learned to heat them up in the oven real good. They have directions on the boxes. Sometime in high school, I got addicted to those. That's your culinary repertoire? Well, Except for heating up peas and canned goods. Yes. Hamburgers. Anyone can fry hamburgers. He loved Marissa. He didn't expect her to be like anyone else. Why did she always expect him to be like some other people? Almost anybody. When I wanted a hamburger, Mrs. Bryant cooked one up. She used to chop up a green pepper to add to them, fix up the patties, and keep a bunch of them in the freezer. Aaron, you're pathetic. Well, unless you considered it reasonable. Yeah, maybe it's your mission to save me. As if, well, he'd tried. Then she changed the subject. How do you think you did this term? Quite decently, actually. He might not match her standards for cooking, but he was still one of the real students in the EE classes unless something had gone seriously wrong. None of the finals shocked me, and the grades going in were okay. That was only true in 2 of the 4 subjects. The other 2 depended on other ungraded work. Another guy and I had to design and wind an electric motor. Neither of us were craftsmen, but it ran. That's a big part of the grade. The final grade in anthro depends on the paper, but I did all right on the tests I got back. Dean's List again? Maybe. Either of the 2 courses, depending on a paper and a project, might well give him an A. Of course, either was far from certain. Knock on wood, he said, knocking. You? Anything can happen in the finals, as you know. And I had several papers and not enough time to do them justice. The grades going in weren't that bad. Hell Week didn't do me any favors. Well, no, the damn sorority never has done her any favors. You just don't do it right. Have the pledges write the papers for you. Whatever you think, the courses I take do require some preparation. Well, it wasn't really meant to be a sensible suggestion, though they could be used as research assistants. Tell me you're not seriously thinking of doing that. You're evil, she said, but there was laughter in her voice. He pulled her into a hug. Warm, though? See, that's why you should marry me. I'll keep you warm at night. Electric blankets are cheap. Hey, I live on cornflakes and canned spaghetti. I'm the most frugal guy you know. Or at least the silliest. Was that any sillier than asking what chores he'd do just to stay in her life? Her presence had a pull one he always felt. He kissed the top of her head, which was all he could reach from where he was. Hey, are you trying to start something? She asked with mock suspicion. Actually, I was hoping to keep something going. It's too early for dinner. We're all packed. What else is there to do? We were in the middle of dividing up household chores, he reminded her. Well, you already said I should make a list of what I want you to learn, and you'll work on it this summer. You take out the garbage. That one's easy. I already do. If I didn't, this place would have reeked by now. That settled. He gently touched the side of her arm, his hand moving slowly over her nightgown in a comforting gesture. What are you doing? She asked. The question you want is, where are you going? He joked, teasing her lightly. I know exactly where you're headed, she said, raising an eyebrow. Well then, I guess we've got no more mysteries to solve. They both laughed, and for a while, simply enjoyed the calm silence that followed, letting their plans and chores wait for another moment. Aaron. She sounded more interested in the main issue now. Did you have more questions? Please, she said. Well, since she asked nicely, he brushed her hair back and gently ran his hand along her back. She relaxed into him, and the quiet stillness between them grew more comforting. He kept the same gentle rhythm, and he felt her muscles loosen even further. Aaron, she murmured, shifting slightly. He felt her move against his chest and arms, her body adjusting to rest more comfortably. He loosened his embrace and kissed her hair. When she'd had time to settle, he let his hand drift lightly along her side. He couldn't see much from his position, just the top of her head, but he appreciated the comforting feel of her presence. She caught his hand and moved it to her waist. Apparently, she wasn't quite ready to be touched like that again. He rested his hand gently, then lightly touched her shoulder. Aaron, I'm thinking. If I have to get up and get dressed to think, I will. That was her way of setting a boundary. He respected it, pausing his movements. She shifted his hand slightly, but didn't push him away. After a long, quiet moment, she took his hand and kissed his fingers. Are you back? He asked softly. Silly. I've been right here. Well, physically. This, he said, brushing her arm, has been right here. This, he kissed her head, was a million miles away. Well, I'm back. I promised I'd always come back. She had, and he held that close to his heart. So you did, he said, with a soft smile. And so you did. He kissed her hair again and gently embraced her. She shifted, but not away from him. As he held her, she seemed content, relaxed but not disengaged. He kissed his way slowly from her hairline toward her ear. When he kissed behind it, she turned her head, but eventually leaned back toward him. Her hair was soft, but her skin felt even more alive to him. He moved gently, tracing the curve of her neck and shoulder with his lips. She lifted her legs slightly to adjust her position. He rested his hand on her hip for balance and steadiness. She shifted again and gently nudged his hand to her side, then turned over and raised her gown to get more comfortable. He moved to help, but she sat up and adjusted it herself. He reached over to pull the covers up around her, making sure she stayed warm. Under the blankets, the air was cool at first, but began to warm around them. He gently kissed her shoulder and then up toward her collarbone. She nestled close, and her hand found his. "You know," he said, "one advantage to lying like this like last time is there's no adjustment needed afterward. You're already right here in my arms." "Well," she replied, "there's no law saying I have to be in your arms." There wasn't, but there will be, he said with mock sternness. "You choose the housing, you assign me the chores. But you sleep here. Every night." She didn't argue. "Not seriously. We could even put a mirror on the wall, one that folds down," he continued. "For guests, it shows a painting. But for us, well, just a way to reflect something meaningful. Something beautiful." "Nix on the mirror," she said. "What if we have guests? Or worse, my mom sees it." "Fair enough," he chuckled. "We'll hang a landscape. A safe one. Maybe with a hidden hinge. I think we've agreed that decor is in my domain. I might even choose twin beds." "Horrors," he gasped. "If you want," she teased. "But don't you think this is a little crowded?" She giggled. She wasn't serious. And he knew it. "Decor is your job," he said. "But I reserve the right to hold you every night." She gave no answer, just leaned into his arms again. He gently brushed her hair aside and kissed her temple, her nose, her cheek. When their lips met, the kiss was long and unhurried. When she finally pulled away, he held her hand. "You are the most amazing woman." She smirked. "Do you even own a broom?" That wasn't quite the response he expected. "A broom? Yeah. Or a dustpan?" He laughed. "No. Well, one of us is going to get them." "Who's getting dressed?" She was in a rhetorical question mood. Still, he knew better than to let her walk out into the cold alone. He got dressed and headed to the store. The only broom left looked like it belonged to a witch. The dustpan was standard issue. "This is all they had," he said, returning. She was waiting, now in robe and slippers, clearly having prepared while he was gone. He handed her the broom, and they both burst out laughing. "You've used them?" She sounded incredulous. He might not follow her rules for housekeeping, but he'd worked for the past 5 summers. "Sure. The hardware store had a permanent cleaning crew, but we cleaned the grocery store by ourselves. For that matter, the hardware cleaning crew took vacations, too, and I filled in a few days." She took the broom and swept a small section of the floor thoroughly. He could see where this type of broom, despite the extra effort it required, had advantages in such small spaces. It also worked better with the dustpan. "Now you do it." It was easy. "Find a place to store them," she said when he'd finished. "Well, the corner between the wall with the hallway and the wall with the kitchen seemed the best place." "Now what?" he asked, wondering if she had another chore in mind. He didn't want her to think he was dodging work if they returned to relaxing together. "Sit down," she said. He pulled his chair to the table and sat. "Turn around." When he faced away from the table, she settled onto his lap, a warm, comforting presence in his arms. "This isn't as cozy as I expected," she said, sitting up stiffly. He loosened his hold, keeping her close but giving her space to move if she wanted. "I was just outside," he explained. "In a coat, but still." She relaxed into him, nestling closer. "The floor will be better on your bare feet," she pointed out. She was right, sometimes other people's ways made sense. "You're right," he admitted. "I eat off plates because you prefer it over cans, but this is better. I was tracking dirt into bed sometimes. I should have thought of this myself." It had been a minor annoyance, but he'd have fixed it if he'd given it thought. Sitting like this felt like a signal they could be affectionate, but not too serious. He could have deepened the moment, but instead, he gently rested his hand on her shoulder and kissed her ear. She responded by brushing her cheeks softly against his, her warmth a quiet comfort. He murmured. "That feels wonderful. I love you. I love you, Aaron," she replied, her voice soft before turning more serious. "I'm not saying I'll marry you, but as long as I'm yours, I'm only yours. No closeness with anyone else, no hugs, not even casual gestures except for family, of course. And I'm the same for you," he said, grinning. "Except for the not saying I'll marry you part." Her words sparked a thought he hadn't fully considered about himself. "Look, when my parents split, Mom made all kinds of accusations. The ones about Dad's secretary were ridiculous. How are you?" He gently pressed a finger to her lips. "Let me finish. Dad did share something with Miss Weissman, though. 2 people promise to share their lives, but then one has a big part of their life they don't share with their partner, only with someone else. I can understand the jealousy." He paused, wondering if engineers had secretaries. He hoped not. "Anyway, I don't suspect you of being close with other guys. I'm just jealous of the huge part of your life you share with your sorority sisters, shutting me out." "Aaron, do you really want to be part of that? Besides the shower room, I mean." "It's not what you do," he said. "I don't care about Hell Week or secret rituals. It's that it's part of you I can't see. It takes you away from me. You want me to be a housewife, always at your beck and call. No way. Marissa was going to be a teacher, and he loved that about her. Even if you were home all day, I'd be gone. We wouldn't be together. I don't want you to ditch the sorority, it's just frustrating. Life's like that sometimes. It was strange, though, to feel frustration around her. Marissa and frustration belonged to different parts of his life. Why are you so sure your mom was wrong? Was your dad a saint through the breakup? It's not that he was perfect, Aaron said. After the divorce, some time after mom left, he dated. Sometimes he stayed out all night, usually Fridays, but he was always home when I needed to get up for school. I met two of the women later. I realized they were ones he considered marrying. He connected the dots. So, take your pick. He was secretly close with Miss Weissman while dating others. He was close with her, then ended it, but kept her as his secretary, or there was nothing between them. I think the last is most likely. But she was important in his life. Still is. That's why it's unlikely. He struggled to explain. An office relationship is a bad idea. Could it stay secret? Could it end without anyone knowing? He was promoted to vice president years after the divorce. I see your point. You know, your parents' divorce scares me. What do you think of divorce? It scares her? It had scared him, though really, the divorce wasn't the worst part. When doctors amputate somebody's leg, it's almost always the best answer. Docs are human as the rest of us. They make mistakes, but almost always it's the best answer. It's still a tragedy. You say, I'm sorry you lost your leg. You don't say, they should have left that gangrenous leg on you. Same with divorce. Well, not quite the same. Although those deciding on it are neither professionals nor impartial. They probably make a hell of a lot more mistakes. In my parents' case, the tragedy was the marital gangrene, not the radical cure. I used to hear them shouting at each other. Worse were the arguments and whispers we weren't supposed to hear. One of the girls got a phone call in the middle of October. Her parents were divorcing, and she claims that she never heard them argue. Out of state? Freshman year? You aren't supposed to know that. I'm revealing a confidence if you know the girl. I don't. It's just that this sounds like a couple who had said goodbye to their marriage, but were staying together for the sake of the kids. Those would agree to send their kids away before the shit hit the fan. Maybe so. Still, it doesn't sound like what you described. Of course, it wasn't. Well, it wasn't. Every unhappy marriage is different from the others. Somebody said that. And today, even happy marriages are different from one another. Pastor Jake's wife, Anna, was a dedicated helper. Her life was his ministry. Mrs. Pierce is a college professor. She has her own life and career. I doubt that she knows what Mr. Pierce does in the Loop or wherever. Yeah, and Mom, except for entertaining a couple of times a year, leaves Dad's job strictly alone. She has her own life, but it doesn't make money. And you're going to be a teacher. He wouldn't impede the life she had planned. I told you that I didn't want to have you for my unhappy wife. I go back and forth on that. I want you so much that I'd be tempted to try to take you captive, if that were possible. But, really, I want you to be happy. I don't want you to leave, but I don't want you to want to leave. How about your walking away? That was absurd. Not going to happen. Officially, possibly, but there are no guarantees. Aaron, you have to leave now. Even then, there are no guarantees. When I sent you to the store, you went. Well, there were all sorts of leaving. But that's not leaving you, except temporarily and physically. Aaron, I want something. Go get it. Is much different from Aaron leave. The one is being part of the relationship. I'll go to work 5 days a week. That won't be leaving you, much as I'd love to spend my life in bed with you. I can't decide whether you're a hopeless romantic or a sex maniac. Those are mutually contradictory. Was this another of the rules she got out of the ether? Well, whatever she thought, she didn't resist when his hands roved her smoothness. She even cooperated in the kisses. He didn't get serious, though, and he was glad he hadn't when she looked at her watch. It's really time to make dinner. Not that hamburgers are much dinner. Well, hamburgers were a romantic dinner. Didn't she remember? You know, hamburgers and toasted cheese sandwiches are the two first foods you cooked for me. They're playing our song, or at least our menu. Considering what else happened those afternoons, I'm surprised you remember the menu. Considering what happened those afternoons, I remember every detail of those days. Did she want a minute-by-minute account? Like this, he could enrich the account with touches. Well, we can't get together this vacation. Tonight will have to last you for the rest of 76. She rose from his lap as she was saying that. She started busying herself with food prep as if to tease him with her unavailability after that comment. The rest of 76. Sounds worse than it is. Well, how about January? Will you spend 2 nights a week here? He could face deprivation if he had something to look forward to. Anyway, she didn't have any more pledges to torture. Sure, except now she was back being afraid of him during her periods. Well, she didn't have to be. 2 days every week. I've proven to you that I won't force myself on you. You sleep in my arms. Other than that, you set the limits. That was his basic desire. Sex? Sure, as much as she'd give him. But he needed her presence more. Look, she was still dithering. You're thinking of marrying me. If you don't, you'll end up marrying somebody. And somebody, he'd wager, with less control than he had. Do you expect to sleep on the couch for 7 nights a month? And, if you do, how will you explain it to our kids? Take the plunge. Well, marriage is something else. Okay, he might have to wait 1.5 years, but he'd waited twice that long already. But let's see how much we could get sooner. Marriage is forever. Try it. Try it with a man who'll obey your rules. If the answer is still no, then I'll know before the ceremony. If the answer is yes, then you'll know that you're not going into the marriage with your fingers crossed on one important particular. This is important to you, isn't it? Well, yes, although she appeared unaware of how much she had already conceded. I want to have you. To really have you means that you're in my arms. Having your clothes in the closet is a poor substitute. Well, you said that you wouldn't have me. Not in that way, but she knew that wasn't what he'd meant. Now you're playing with words. I've said that I wouldn't screw you. I've also said that I wanted to hold you. Is that distinction clear enough for you? Put the plates and condiments on the table. That was changing the subject with a vengeance. Well, he'd let her have her intermission. The meal was delicious. Food always tasted better when he had watched her cook it. Put the dishes in the sink to soak, she said. Then, sit down like before. She sat in his lap. We don't know each other well enough. Well, he'd like to know her better. What's the first thing you remember? Your speech about MYF projects. Not the first thing you remember about me. What's the first thing you remember about Aaron? He didn't enjoy those memories, but she'd asked. He talked about being odd man out, odd little boy out, really. About the big kids who must have been in 6th grade or lower, ragging him and beating him up. He got to the good part as fast as he could. But, then, in one class English, probably, so your colleagues helped rescue me, I had a sentence to read. Something like, yesterday, Johnny read the story. Whatever the sentence, it had the word read in the past. I pronounced it correctly, and the teacher made a fuss because I'd missed the previous day when the class learned the pronunciation. Well, I already enjoyed reading. Dad read to us every night. I figured that this was something I could do well and do by myself without the bullies around. I started reading everything they gave me. When Dad found out, he got more books out of the library and gave me others of my own. By the time I started 8th grade, I was reading at the level of the end of 9th. I had my own library card and used it frequently. Sometime, Dad gave me a paperback dictionary, adult level. I used to look up all the dirty words. Did you know that virgin is a dirty word? She didn't. That's 'cause you were never a male adolescent. Anyway, the family got a Britannica, and I never looked back. School was no fun. Walking home was sheer hell. Once at home, I lost myself in a book. I read my school books. Hell, by that time I would read a phone book if nothing else was available. I used to read cereal boxes at breakfast. When I was first in high school, the girls wouldn't dance with me. I was too much of a dweeb. Then I learned to dance. Mom taught me, and she taught me well. I started going to school dances and noticed which girls didn't get asked. So I asked them. Their choice was either to keep standing around feeling left out or to dance with me. Some of them said yes. Over time, having a date became socially important, and eventually, some girls agreed to go with me. But between freshman year when I got turned down by most of the popular girls and senior year, I never asked another popular girl out. He paused for a breath, and for effect. Then, when I did, you turned me down. Poor Aaron, she said gently. She meant it kindly, not mockingly. Well, at least you had a polite excuse. You didn't say, with you? Ick. So I waited a while and asked you again. I never thought you were ick, she said sincerely. I thought you were a nice guy, but I was already going steady. You're the sweetest woman. He smiled warmly and leaned in to give her a light hug. Think the burgers are digested now? She asked playfully. If they are, he replied with a grin. Maybe it's time for a walk or something. He stood and offered his hand. She took it, laughing. Later, as they relaxed on the couch under a light blanket, he brushed a bit of hair from her forehead and gave her a soft smile. They shared quiet conversation and a few light-hearted stories from school. She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Eventually, she began to drift off, and he adjusted the blanket over both of them. Her breathing deepened as she fell asleep nestled against his side. He closed his eyes too, comforted by her presence, and soon joined her in sleep. Dear listeners, next part will be released soon. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.